That night, he stood outside the bedroom window like a streak of ink clinging to the dark. On the sill, there were only 2 red sparks, glowing like embers, staring inside. The air was still, yet the curtain breathed as if an invisible hand were lifting it. The girl on the bed turned slightly, her neck tilting to one side, a lock of hair falling away to reveal a patch of pale skin. In that instant, the world shrank down to a single pulse beneath the skin and a hunger older than human history. He did not need to knock, did not need to break a lock. His shadow slid over the wall, across the floor, and climbed onto the bed before his body ever moved. When he bent down, there was no scream, only a breath swallowed and never returned. By morning, the room was still tidy, everything in its place, with only one difference. In the mirror, there was no trace of the midnight guest. People have called him many names, but the name that has chilled Europe for more than a century is Dracula. Dracula did not enter human culture as some nameless beast. He arrived like a nobleman, a count, someone who once was human, who commanded armies, who rode through valleys littered with corpses. The figure Bram Stoker created is not a howling demon lurking at the forest edge, but a tall, thin man with slick-back hair, a bloodless face, deep-set eyes, and a low, deliberate voice that can silence a whole room with a few polite sentences. Dracula is terrifying, not just because he has fangs, but because he understands human psychology. He knows when to smile, when to stay silent, when to let his prey step closer without him lifting a finger. In his Transylvanian castle, the stone walls are as cold as bone. Corridors drop away into darkness. Staircases twist like knotted veins. The whole building feels like a gigantic corpse that died a long time ago but refuses to rot. Inside it, Dracula moves like a living shadow, hearing the heartbeat of anyone who wanders in, sensing fear as clearly as breath. He does not appear immediately. He lets silence do the work, lets the wind whistle through cracks in the walls, lets the wolves howl from the mountains, until his guests imagine horrors worse than reality. When he finally chooses to show himself, it is always from a position of complete control, like a host who has been rehearsing this ritual for centuries. Dracula is immortal, but not in any holy or heroic sense. His immortality is a curse. He does not grow old, but it is not youth. It is suspension. His face is a wound in time frozen mid-healing. Wars, plagues, empires rising and collapsing have all rolled past like waves, while he stands like a rock that never sinks. He remembers too much, has outlived too many lives, so his gaze on humanity is always tinged with exhaustion. He has no need for achievements, fame, or love. The only thing he truly counts anymore is blood. As centuries pass, he has only one task: to make sure there are always fresh bodies to feed his curse. Dracula was born in darkness, but he is not some creature that panics at the first ray of light. He hates the sun because it exposes everything, tears secrets open. The night is where he becomes invisible. He can slip from tree shadow to wall shadow, from rooftop to windowsill, without leaving a footprint. He can become a bat, a cloud of mist, or stand at the center of a ring of wolves. But his real power is not in spectacle. It is in the way he makes people open the door to him. He rarely breaks in. He waits to be invited by a tempting offer, a door left ajar out of curiosity, a lonely heart needing someone to listen. Once invited, he becomes part of the rules of the house. Small details are what make this character so haunting. Dracula does not appear in mirrors. It is not that he is invisible. It is that there is nothing for the glass to reflect. Mirrors give back souls that still belong fully to the living world. Dracula stands on the border, no longer human, not yet a spirit in any religious sense. No reflection, no shadow in the ordinary sense. He exists like a glitch in reality's rules. He recoils from the smell of garlic, from the sight of the cross, from symbols that suggest a greater order beyond his hunger. He sleeps in his native soil, in coffins, like a corpse that refuses to accept its death. Each tiny detail, on its own, might seem strange. Together, they form a complete image so strong that almost every vampire after him has been trapped inside it. In Stoker's story, Dracula's first contact with the modern world is not in London, but right in his own castle, when Jonathan Harker, a young solicitor, arrives to help him sign documents to purchase property in England. It is a crucial moment. A young man of the 19th century, well-educated, trained in law, with a mind shaped by reason, steps into a world haunted by a medieval ghost. And the unsettling thing is that it is Harker who loses his bearings. Dracula understands the documents Harker brings, understands the value of property, and understands how to use the legal machinery of an empire to clear a path for himself. He does not attack at random. He signs contracts, seals papers, pays deposits, all to cover a single purpose: to deliver his curse right into the heart of a nation absolutely confident in its medicine and civilization. When he leaves Transylvania, Dracula does not travel alone. He takes with him crates full of his native earth. That soil is not a keepsake. It is his refuge by day, his source of strength, the cradle of his curse. Each box is a portable nest of infection, a patch of tainted ground, nailed shut and shipped abroad. The voyage aboard the Demeter turns his migration into a maritime nightmare. Crewmen vanish one by one. Footsteps echo on deck at night. The wind is still, yet the sails swell. By the time the ship reaches harbor, there is no one left alive on board. Only corpses, silence, and a black dog that leaps ashore and melts into the fog. It is more than a horror scene. It is a perfectly familiar image for Europe. The plague ship drifting in from distant waters, carrying something nobody on shore can see, but which the entire city will soon feel. In London, Dracula changes masks. He is no longer the dark figure on a crumbling wall, but a gentleman who appears in respectable places, speaking softly, perhaps sitting unnoticed in the corner of a theater, studying the crowd with a predator's eyes. No one looks at this well-dressed foreign visitor and thinks, "Monster." See a slightly odd man with a strange accent and a gaze that does not blink enough. He does not butcher people in public or stage dramatic crimes. He begins with fragile, suggestible women, the ones prone to daydreaming. He does not just suck their blood, he takes over their dream life. Lucy loses more than blood. She loses her will. At night, she drifts out of the house as if sleepwalking, going straight to where he waits, like a somnambulist walking into the arms of a hunter. Dracula never has to scream or roar. The most frightening thing about him is his cold patience. He feeds slowly so the victim does not die at once, so that family and friends will assume illness, call doctors, give transfusions, pray. He lets people blame the weather, the air, nerves, anything but him. Each night, he takes a little more, until the body belongs to no one but him. When Lucy dies, he does not simply discard her. He gives her a second existence as his tool, a newborn vampire who preys on children, on what is purest in the community. Dracula does not just kill, he turns victims into weapons. That is what elevates him above most monsters. He replicates himself. Seen as a single being, Dracula is the perfect apex predator. He combines physical strength, sorcery, social intelligence, and psychological manipulation. He can crawl down walls like a spider, summon wolves with a whisper, dissolve into mist to evade danger. But he also knows the rules that bind him. Sunlight harms him, the cross burns him, mirrors expose his absence. The wooden stake can end his cycle. These weaknesses do not make him less frightening. They make him feel like a creature with laws, a wild beast that can, in theory, be hunted if you learn its code. That code has been written down, rephrased, and reused again and again in popular culture. Every time someone writes a vampire, Dracula's silhouette is standing quietly behind them, shaping their work. But Dracula is not only a character. He is the long, dark shadow of a very specific fear, disease. Long before Bram Stoker gave him a name, Europe had spent centuries living with epidemics it did not understand. People died in clusters. Whole villages vanished. And when the earth was dug up, people saw only unnatural corpses, swollen bellies, dark stains at the mouth, hair and nails that seemed to have grown. To peasants of the 17th and 18th centuries, this was proof of something not fully dead, feeding underground. Germs had no names yet, but the vampire already did. When one person in a family died of some unknown sickness, and others began to decline in the same way, people had no concept of contagion, but they understood perfectly the feeling of being followed. They believed the dead had returned, draining the strength of those they knew in life. The only way to stop it was to dig up the grave and destroy the corpse a second time. Those rituals of staking, decapitation, and burning were not performed because villagers enjoyed violence, but because they were desperate to end a chain of death they could not explain. The fear of epidemics with no visible cause created the need for a physical carrier to blame, the vampire. By the 19th century, as medicine began to identify bacteria, disease had also become something darkly glamorous and deeply shameful. Tuberculosis turned young people into romantic ghosts, thin bodies, white skin, flushed cheeks, bright eyes, coughing up blood yet somehow ethereal. Syphilis and other sexually transmitted diseases, meanwhile, were buried under layers of guilt and silence. People were beginning to understand that blood could carry illness, that a touch, a kiss, a single night of ecstasy could cost a lifetime. In that context, Dracula appears as a nearly perfect metaphor, a creature who lives on blood, who spreads his curse through intimate contact, who is both alluring and destructive. More than anything, the way Dracula spreads is identical to disease. He comes from elsewhere, like an outbreak from the margins. He travels by ship, like real epidemics once did. He begins with an index case, Lucy. Doctors scramble to save her using the latest technique of their time, blood transfusion, without realizing that each time they pour vitality into her body, Dracula returns at night to siphon it away. Lucy is not just a patient. She is a relay point, a bridge between Dracula and the wider community. If she is not stopped, she will soon infect children and men who fall under her gaze. The chain of transmission will spiral outward, just like every real epidemic history has recorded. Dracula condenses many fears into one figure. He is tuberculosis, tied to fragile beauty. He is venereal disease, tied to secret encounters and pleasure with a price. He is cholera and plague, arriving with ships and global trade. He is the nightmare of tainted blood, of degenerate stock, of a lineage poisoned from within. It is no coincidence that Stoker makes him come from Eastern Europe, from a region which, in British imagination at the time, was both wild and threatening. He is the foreign infection, but at the same time, he is also the mirror image of what Europe itself had carried to the rest of the world through colonization and war. When cinema took hold of this character, the link between Dracula and disease grew even more explicit. Nosferatu recasts him as a gaunt, rodent-like monster with hooked claws, and wherever he goes, rats and coffins follow. The town in the film is swallowed by funeral processions, death notices pasted on walls, marked houses, a collective nightmare of post-epidemic Europe projected onto a single face. That face has nothing seductive left, only an absolute hunger that looks like illness given shape. Later interpretations, from Bela Lugosi to Christopher Lee, from Anne Rice to modern series, add new layers of meaning. In the age of HIV/AIDS, vampires are retold as creatures of secrecy, their existence tied to blood, sex, stigma, and isolation. In science fiction stories, vampire origins become viruses, lab accidents, genetic mutations. Test tubes replace crypts, doctors replace priests, yet the underlying structure remains the same. There is a disease that turns people into beings who survive by feeding on the blood of others, who shun the light, who fear discovery, and who, if not contained, can drag society into darkness. In the 21st century, vampires have flooded every corner of pop culture. Many versions no longer mention curses or unholy rites at all. They talk about engineered pathogens, designer viruses, military experiments gone wrong. A bite becomes a kind of injection. Contagion is tracked with graphs, computer models, quarantine zones. Vampires are openly described as carriers, vectors, subjects. And yet, under the changed vocabulary, nothing essential has shifted. They remain the embodiment of something that enters the bloodstream, rewrites the body, and reorders social life. Today, Dracula has stepped out of his original body and become a template. Every time someone designs a new vampire, they borrow his cloak, his castle, his eyes, his relationship to blood and contagion. He is the base pattern for a very modern kind of monster, a monster of spread. That is why he never goes out of date. Whenever humanity faces a new wave of illness, when fear once again clings to doorknobs, breath, and touch, the invisible panic makes Dracula's shadow stretch a little farther. You could say that for more than a century, Dracula has drunk far more than blood. He has drunk Europe's memories of epidemics, its sexual anxieties, its fear of strangers, its guilt over exploitation. He has become shorthand for anything that sucks blood in modern life. Predatory financial systems, corporations that live off exhausted workers, streams of toxic information that drain people's mental energy. Every time we use the word vampire to describe exploitation, we are unconsciously calling up the face Bram Stoker drew. When night falls and the glass towers of the city begin to mirror neon and headlights, when people hold in their hands devices that shrink the world to a single swipe, the idea of an immortal figure standing somewhere in the dark, watching, waiting for a moment of weakness, still doesn't feel old at all. Dracula, born from Europe's fear of disease, has walked out of literal blood and microbes to become a symbol of everything that spreads silently. He is a reminder that every era has its own plagues, its own vampires, and that the human imagination will always try to pin them onto a face and a name. And for more than 100 years now, that name has been whispering from the shadows: Dracula.